there, welcome back to another video. Today I'm talking about Bazz Luhrmann's Elvis film. It's just been released over the summer. I finally got to see it. And I'm actually projected, so I've actually saw it in a big screen environment. So even though it's now released on home video, I did do my best to see as much as I could, like the cinema. That's a film I was kind of dreading seeing because it's 2.5 to 3 hours long. It's about Elvis. Elvis can be a bit of a tough subject because it's not the most exciting subject. He's a guy who was a big rock star, did some movies, and who died in a drug overdose. It could be a really, the women loved him. He did a lot of good pop songs, but it's a subject matter. It could be hard going. Plus, it's a director who I come and go with, really, to be honest. I mean, my favourite of his, Bazz Luhrmann's films, is still strictly Ballroom, which is his first one, which got, I think, the melodrama and the camp right mixed with the story. Romeo and Juliet was fine. DiCaprio was rubbish at Shakespeare, which is a problem. But there's a lot of visual excess I kind of enjoyed. It was like one of those ones that it wasn't flawless, but it was enjoyable, tosh. I had fun with it. Moulin Rouge was the one I had real problems with. It was like Buffalo Nation level melodrama and storytelling, mixed with over the top visuals, really. So for every good sequence you had, it would then follow on with something really trashy and awful in storytelling. And when I say Buffalo Nation level, I don't mean the racism. I mean about the actual storytelling mechanics of some of the really early silent movies where it's at the most basic level storytelling, and they'll try to be ironic and say it's about love, but it's also about a bitter look at love, and the film never covered that. It just was like cliche after cliche for me. I just thought it would never get the balance right at all. So that one I find excruciating in lots of ways, even though there's some nice sequences and actors are trying their best, but the direction's kind of killing it. That put off Luhrmann for me for a while, actually. I mean, I've not seen Australia or The Great Gatsby. Even though I've got both, I just need to watch them. After Elvis, I'm probably more inclined to watch them now. Because Elvis is probably my second favourite Luhrmann film after Strictly Ballroom. Because I really liked this film. I thought he'd come back to form and he'd actually be able to tell a story just beyond the visual stuff. He actually come back to the story. Which is helpful. I mean, to be honest, I'm more a Beatles guy than I'm an Elvis. There's usually either Beatles or Elvis. It doesn't mean that they're your favourite. It just means of the two, there's going to be one you're going to like better because they're both from a certain era. And I'm definitely head towards the Beatles side of things. I think they did more good songs, more great songs. And they did like three great talents, like Lennon, McCartney, and George Harrison. Elvis just did Elvis, and he had a lot of good songs, but a lot of it came from early. He's definitely the type of character that peaked in the 50s and then became less interesting as a figure of the culture, more interesting as a figure of tragedy. Which, to be fair, this film gets. That's why the film actually works. It understands that. That's the dynamic. The first half's about the 50s Elvis. And his dealings with his mother, his father, his family, his influences. They really go into detail about that, and then the downturn is covered quicker because they know that you can figure a lot out yourself, so you don't need it to just be this dirge of stuff. It kind of avoids that. I still think that John Carpenter's Elvis film is better because John Carpenter is a better director than Bazz Luhrmann. This was 70s Carpenter. And you Kurt Russell's Elvis, who looks more like Elvis. Austin Butler plays Elvis in this film, and he's very good. He keeps the film together all the time. He doesn't entirely look like Elvis, but doesn't entirely not look like Elvis. It's that weird element of you can tell it's an actor playing a part because he's not a spitting image, but he embodies the character well, so you can suspend disbelief quite easily. Unless you're looking for a carbon copy, like waxwork performance. If you just look for an actor playing the part and delivering the part, this one really delivers. Again, because Luhrmann actually knows what he's doing in this film. He knows he can only go. Has to put his style in service of a story, and the story really is about how Elvis is taken down by one Colonel Tom Parker, played by Tom Hanks, and two, his own discomfort at the consequences of fame. Because I think both of them are major players in why he fails. The film shows you Parker as being like the guy who always crushed his ambitions. The film also shows that Elvis is kind of a weakling in some ways. He doesn't stand up for himself. He always falls. For all the rebel poses he does, he's not very strong. And the film shows that. He's a bit more sensitive. He's probably too sensitive for a lot of things he's dealing with. So there's lots of elements there that are part of his downfall. Because you realise he died at 42 when he should have been reaching his peak. He was dead. And it's like corrosive element of fame, like how you just lose contact with people. Especially if you don't have something outside of your fame that actually keeps you solid and keeps you part of life. If all you have is the fame, it's going to just corrupt you. That's what the film kind of does. But it shows you the first half's about how he links up to that feeling of how he succeeds and what he's about. So it shows you his influence of the black performers where he grew up. Like, he was a product of white society and black society, because he saw this, the songs from the black areas, and he took a lot from that. But the film kind of shows us, like, look, this was a person influenced by this culture, the same way that Eminem's influenced by rap. It was going to happen. Someone was going to do it. It was Elvis, so you got someone who was really good who did it. A lot of the biggest stars are people who take stuff that other performers have done and combine them into something that just works for the mass audience. Elvis was one of these characters, the same way Michael Jackson was, the Beatles were. Just someone who just connects in a way that's beyond natural sanity. So there's that element of Elvis which they show. I mean, some people have said Elvis had a racist tendency in real life. I don't know enough about Elvis to know if that's true. I don't know if this overplayed the black side of his affection for all this music. But it's obvious in the music there's an affection for this kind of music. It's obviously there. There's a lot of things taken from that. He is the kind of white version of a lot of this music that was sold to the general public. And it was a racist time where people were terrified of this guy doing his hip movements and stuff, which just came from black music and was considered obscene. So he covers all of that stuff and all the his controversy because he just comes out like a rocket. And he just blows up everywhere instantly, and people are shocked by him and unsure what to do with him because he's just this energy that the country needs, and he's the thing that sparks off rock and roll. Sparks off things, it brings a lot of talents that were just in the black areas to the forefront because they could sell it, because he took it from black music. A lot of their music was now popular. If it had a tint of racism of exploiting the black performers though as well, so you've got that kind of element, which film doesn't go into too much detail with, but there is a sense of like, there are a few lines that say, yeah, you can get away with that because you're white and we couldn't. There is that element to it. But it does show that this idea of Elvis as a guy who loves this music, and he's a sponge for all the different influences. He loves all this stuff, and he's a sponge for influences. And he has as much joy when he's working with different musicians and creating, different tempos, different experimentations running music. He gets, like most artists, he gets bored easily by his stuff and he wants to move on and do something else. He hits ruts quite easily because he's not content with what he's done. He wants to find other ways to do it, even if he's doing it within the limited form of rock and roll. Now, of course, because it's a film that's set in the 50s and 60s, and 70s, there's a lot of talk about the politics at the time, like, assassinations of Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and stuff like that. That does come in. That does show I'm affected by it. It's not as focused in that way Ali was, because Ali was much more of a political figure in that. And Elvis is just a pop star. He could be affected by it, but he is getting told by his people, do not be political. That's not you. So the film is about his slow fall, and it's like he starts off as a singer who's just this great energy. When the energy's too much, they try and get him arrested, so he goes in the army for 2 years to prove he's a patriot. And you think that'll stop him, but actually it just makes him more acceptable to the masses. But it also makes him lose some edge, because he's now part of the system. And when he comes back, he's into movies, because Parker can arranges this, and the movies get worse and cheaper and worse, and it just takes away all the edge that Elvis had. And you can see Tom Parker slowly taking away his ambitions, because it's easier to just to cash in and make a fortune. And Elvis is spending so much money that he doesn't understand that he should be saving this money so that he's got basically he's got the solid groundwork for doing what he wants to do. Instead, he spends the money and doesn't do that. He also doesn't realise that Parker's playing him a lot. Like Parker, when his mother dies, Parker becomes like a parental figure to him in a way that it makes Elvis blind to the fact that he's been used a lot. And there's that element throughout the film, is this corrosive parental figure who's out for himself, who doesn't really care about what's been sold as long as something's been sold, so he can get his money off it. He's a cynical figure, he's this fat Machiavelli figure who just destroys everything he touches because he's no faith in anybody. It's quite funny, Tom Hanks has played so many nice guys, and he was always avoiding villains. And when he finally gets to a villain, he's playing one of the most despicable people in pop culture history. He saved it all up for this one. He's been criticised for his performance because he's doing a performance in a very theatrical film. He cannot do a naturalistic performance in this film. He has to be theatrical. And then I say, oh, he's over the top. It's like, no, he's not. He knows what film he's in. He's played this kind of figure in this film. It does go back to some things he's done in the past, like Lady Killers and things like that, where he's a bit more theatrical, or Cloud Atlas, where some of the parts are more theatrical. So he has done that stuff, but people don't like that from him, so he got some criticism. And they'll say, oh my god, the guy playing Elvis is amazing, but Tom Hanks. It's like, no, they're both good, but Hanks has to be theatrical in this film. It's just, that's what it needs. It needs a villain. And because it's about a story about a guy failing, you need the villain to be, someone who's just whispers in his ear all the time, and you see, don't do that, and he always does it, and it always comes back. Because a psychological need for a parental figure means he does not step back and look at what he's doing. Or when he does it half-heartedly, and does little bits, and he falls back into the pattern of falling for all the stuff that Tom Parker does, and Tom Parker's not even his real name. And it becomes this thing of, if he had more willpower and just sued the guy, he'd probably been out of it quite quicker, but there was a lot of emotional turns as well. And there's a lot of legal things as well that probably could have been thrown to the side quite easily if he were dealing with someone with a lot of willpower and a lot who'd saved him money and who was strong, and Elvis wasn't that guy. So you get that sense of, yeah, Parker was a problem, but a stronger person would not have fallen for him, really. There is a weakness in the character. Despite his big moves, he does have this conservative family side to him of protecting his family and respecting authority, and he's gullible in lots of ways. He's a person, an instinct. He wants an instinct rather than intellectualizing, and sometimes he doesn't quite know how to form his thoughts in a way that's constructive. And you can see that as he gets bigger, like physically and figuratively in the world, he doesn't know how to handle it. He can't connect with people in the same way. When his mother dies, it knocks him for a loop, and he spends a lot of time in the 60s on these terrible movies that everyone hates, including him. And they covered that in a one montage thing. This musical montage thing is really funny. In a sense that even when he comes back with the musical special and he reinvents himself and comes back to Vegas and does a big concert and looks great, all the seeds are there that have been manipulated again. All the seeds are there. There's a lot of fear in them. There's a lot of elements that are there that can be worked upon by Tom Parker, which the film gets is like, this guy has weaknesses. And it's like, well, why did no one step in and try and help him? Why did no one say, look, this guy's bad for you, what are you doing? Why did you not get lawyers early on when he was still fairly young, when he was in the army or something, and actually just say, look, treat this as a business rather than this kind of family thing? Because how Parker gets in, he says, this is a family business, which means they don't look into the bigger picture that often, which means Parker can do whatever he wants and manipulate the whole situation. So there's that element that's there in the story that really works as a sense of a guy who isn't wise in certain ways, who needed a good manager, got a terrible manager instead. And he had problems dealing with people as people. Like, he wanted to love the masses. After a while, you're addicted to that because he's a singer, and that's what this addiction is. So he's addicted to pills, but he's also addicted to the fanfare of all his fans in a way that the people, that normal people, can't quite live up to. And if he's sucked into that and that's your thing, that thing keeps you going beyond even creating anything, that becomes something that's going to rot you away. It's going to make you into drugs. It's going to make you depressed. And you have a sense of, this guy's depressed in the last 5-6 years of his life. And when you get to the actual footage of Elvis at the end, they actually show you Elvis himself rather than just the actor, he looks depressed as hell. It's like, yeah, why was no one saying, like, what's up with you? You look so depressed. Like, this was one of those things where this is a situation that could have been sorted before it got to the guy dying of a heart attack. This was something that was solvable. You know. And the film makes that clear. That's a solvable situation if he did decent representation and someone who was strong for him. So that's a tragedy. And the style of the film is very good because the first half is a lot quicker. It gives you a sense of it's experience of going through this fame that's about. It's not about trying to analyse it or say, this happened here, this happened here. It's like, what does it feel like to Elvis as he goes through this stuff? What does it feel like to other people watching him go through this stuff? It's that kind of sense of what it means to Tom Parker, what does Elvis mean to himself, and then it's the sensation of it. And then we get to the 60s when he's in the army, then he's into these terrible movies. It's done in a flash. It's almost like he's barely living it. He's just like in a kind of daze. And it takes much more time to come back where he actually gets engaged again and doing things and learning who he is again. And then how that gets taken away and how basically he becomes this drudge. So the film always adapts the style to where he is in his life. It's always a hyper-stylized film, but it's always a sense of it's all coming back to where he is. I mean, it's probably too much for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are not going to like this style at all. It's not classical. It is a very, very fast-moving pace. And if you don't like it, I get it. I liked it, but I know Luhrmann a lot of times got on my nerves because I think sometimes he goes too far in certain films. This one I thought he got the right balance, and he was the right guy to do this film because he did the right showbiz feel to cover the rise and the fall, and so make sure the fall gets the points across without being just this depressing thing, and also keeps the humanity of Elvis even as he's failing. Because the big thing that thus thought he's failing a lot. And it's easy to make the character who feels that much annoying. They don't do that. They just show you this is a guy's flaws. He's lost control. He's lost his way. He's depressed, and he's been done in by the person who's over his shoulder the whole time, and the person he trusted. So it becomes a tragedy, really. So yeah, this is an enjoyable film. It's a really enjoyable film. So much better than I expected. I was going to expect a train wreck, to be honest. So it was a nice surprise because it was far better than expected, and it actually was respectful to the story and didn't try and ignore the influence of black culture in Elvis, didn't ignore how horrible Tom Parker was, didn't ignore all the ways that Elvis self-destructed. It was about the whole thing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon with some more, but that's me for now.